Hello, this is Stephen Baltz. I'm your instructor for computer apps at Ozarka College. And today what I'm going to do is take you through the steps to create the queries and other objects in Module 2 in Access. Okay, so I'm going to start on page AC65 in this video and work through page AC88. And then I'll create a second video that will show the queries in the remaining pages of the module. Okay, so if you haven't already done so, what you'll need to do is open up the database that you created in Module 1 in Access, which was called the Pratt Last Associates database. Alright, and as you can see, I've already got mine open, and so just make sure that you have all the objects that you created in Module 1. You should have an account table, an account manager table, an account query, an account form, and an account financial report. Okay. Also, just for further information, you'll need to make sure that if you made any mistakes in creating the objects in Module 1, then you'll need to fix those mistakes before you work on Module 2. Alright? For example, if you had any structure or data errors in the account table or account manager table, then that's going to affect your queries that you create in Module 2. So before you actually start working through the process of creating the queries in Module 2, you'll need to make sure that you fix any errors. Go in and look at the comments that I made on your graded assignments for Module 1 and see if there were any errors that need to be fixed. If there were some mistakes that you made, go ahead and fix those errors first. Okay. All right. With that being said, just kind of look on page 65, AC65 in your book. Just kind of talks about what a query is. We kind of already learned about what a query was in Module 1. If you remember, we used the query wizard in Module 1 to create a very simple query. A query, just in real simplistic terms, is just a question that we ask in a way that Access can understand it. Okay? So we have to use the kind of the language that Access understands in order to form or structure our query or our question. And of course, queries are used to answer questions from a database by businesses on a regular basis. If a business needs to know information about a particular customer or particular product that they're selling, a supplier, an employee, any kind of critical information that they need on a regular basis, they're going to use queries to basically ask questions of the database and get those answers that they're looking for to help their business and make business decisions. So that's kind of the premise or the reason that we're learning how to create queries. Alright, so we've got the Pratt Last Associates database open. You'll notice I've got it open already, and like I said, if you haven't already opened it, you'll need to do that. You'll need to go ahead and open it up. First thing it wants us to do on the first step on page 67 is, like I said, we've got the Pratt Last Associates database open. It wants us to close the navigation pane by clicking the shutter bar open close button. So I did that. And then it wants us to click the Create tab up on the ribbon. So anytime you want to create a new object, and in this case we want to create a new query object, we go to the Create tab up on the ribbon. Okay, so we've done that, and now on page 68 it wants us to click the Query Design button. So we're going to find Query Design in the Queries group on the Create tab, and we're going to click on Query Design. When you click on Query Design, you'll notice it opens up the Query Design window, and it shows a Show Table dialog box. And it basically lists in the show table box right here, it shows the two tables that we created in the Pratt Last Associates database. One of them is the account table, the other is the account manager table. So the first step here is to go ahead and click on the table name that you want to use as the basis for your query. In our case, we want to make sure it's based on the account table. So we're going to make sure account selected in the show table box, and then we're going to click on add. And then once you've done that, click the close button for the show table dialog box so that it is removed from the window, so you have more room to see what you're doing in the query design window. Alright, then you want to point to the bottom border of that account field list box up here in the upper pane and drag it down so that you can see all the fields, because it's not long enough to start with to be able to see all the fields, and we're going to need to be able to double click on the fields in the field list box that are part of the account table to add them to the design grid, which is this lower pane of the query design window. Okay, and that's going to allow us to select the fields from the account table that we want to include in the query. In other words, those fields that are important in getting us the information that we want, the answer to our question. Alright, so the first query that we want to do is on page 69. So what we want to do, in order to add fields from the field list box up here to the design grid, and basically the items that we add to the design grid are those fields that we want included in the query results. Alright, in the answer to our question. So in this case, we want to add account number. So all we're going to do is go to the account number field up in the account field list box and double click on account number. You'll notice it adds that field down here to the design grid. Alright, and then we want to add account name. So we're going to double click on account name. Then we're also going to add the amount paid field using the same double click method, and then current due. Okay, and so we should have, look down here on your design grid, and you should have account number first, then account name, then amount paid, and then finally a current due. Okay, so make sure you have those correct 4 fields in the design grid. And then what we're going to do is on page 70, what we want to do with this first query is we want to find all of the accounts that have or actually no, we want to find a particular account. We want to find account JM323. Okay, we want to find the account by the account number, which the one we're looking for is JM323. So what we're going to do is we're going to go under the account number field in the criteria row under account number on the design grid right here, and just click on the criteria row under account number where the insertion point is moved to the criteria row there, and then type in JM323 exactly how it is shown on page 70. And you have to be exact when you're typing in criteria for queries. It's very critical that you type the information correctly. If I transpose letters or numbers, or if I don't type it exactly the way that it appears in the table, then I'm not going to find any results. Okay. Alright, so once we have our criteria in, we know what we're looking for. All we have to do then is go up to the results group on the Query Tools Design tab up on the ribbon and click the Run button right here. Alright, and what you should expect to see when you run this query is just one account record. Okay, just the account record and just the fields that we selected in the query. Basically we just see just the account JM323. Okay, and so when you look at the results of a query, always check it against what you were asking for. Okay, in this case it is showing me what I asked for, and you can also look in the book on page 70 and it shows you what this query result should look like. Just check it. Okay, then once you know that it's correct, you're going to click the Save button up on the Quick Access toolbar. It's going to open up the Save As dialog box right here, and we're going to type in the name of this query, which is MO2Q01, which just stands for Module 2 Query 1. We're going to number each query as we do it. We're going to save the queries that it tells us to, and we're going to make sure that we save them with the correct name. And that's another thing I need to bring up here, is that as you're working on these queries and you're creating these queries and saving them, make sure that you save them with the name that it tells you to in the textbook. If you name them incorrectly, then I may not be able to grade that particular query. If I don't know which query you were creating because you named it incorrectly, then I'm not going to be able to give you credit for that particular query. So make sure that you take the time to make sure that you're saving the queries correctly with the correct name. Alright, so once we've got the correct name in there, we're just going to click the OK button. You'll notice the tab up here, the Object tab, changes to the name that we specified. Alright, and now on the bottom of page 71, it talks about using saved queries. So once you save a query and you want to reuse it, you can do that. And so then that's what we're going to learn to do next here. Alright, so what we want to do is we want to click the View button up on the Home tab. We're just going to click the View button, and what that's going to do is that's going to switch us from Datasheet View, which is what we were in just a minute ago when we were looking at the results of the query. It's going to switch us back to Design View. The query design view, which basically is where we specified down here on the design grid what fields and what criteria we wanted to show in the results. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete the criteria that we added under account number. Just drag through that text and delete. Okay, press the delete key to delete that text. Alright, now in some cases, you're not going to know the exact record that you're looking for in a table. So the next thing it wants us to kind of learn is how to use what's called a wildcard, which is talked about on page 72 in your textbook. A wildcard in Access is very similar to the wild card that you have in card games. A wild card in Access can represent either one character or any combination of characters. And so there's the asterisk wild card, which represents any number of characters, any collection of characters. It represents what you don't know, what you're looking for, where you know part of what you're looking for, but you don't know all of it. For example, let's say, for example, you know that the account that you're looking for, the account name starts with a K, but you don't know the rest of it. Okay? Well, what you can do is use an asterisk to represent what you don't know. Okay, so you type in what you do know, which is, in our case, that the account name starts with a K, and then use an asterisk to represent, basically be a wild card to represent what you don't know, and it allows you to kind of find a particular record even if you don't know the full name of what you're looking for. Okay. The other wild card, in addition to the asterisk, is the question mark, and a question mark is basically used for just one character. Okay, so if it's just one character you don't know in the name that you're looking for, then you can use the question mark. If it's more than one character, you'll have to use the asterisk. Okay, all right. So what we're going to do is, again, we want to find the account names that start with the letter K. So we're going to go to the criteria row under account name. Okay, so we're going to have to go to the second column here in the design grid under account name, and we're going to type in first what we know, which is that it starts with a K. The account name that we want to look for starts with a K, so we're going to type in a K, and then we're going to type in the asterisk to represent what we don't know. Okay, so we're going to type K asterisk in the criteria row under account name in the design grid right here. Alright, then we're going to click the Run button. All right, and you should see 2 records in the results. And just again, always look to see in the results of your query, see if it makes sense. In this case, we were looking for those accounts that have an account name that starts with K. And so if you ended up with results that were different than what you were looking for, then you know that you need to go back and redesign your query. Okay? All right. So in this case, mine looks correct. Just kind of check it against the, again, check yours against the example that you see there on the top of page 73. And then what we're going to do is, since we reused query 1 to create this query 2, we're going to have to go, in order to save this query that we reused with a different name, we're going to have to go to File, the File tab up on the ribbon, and then click on Save As, and then we're going to click on Save Object As, and then click Save As, and it's going to open up the Save As dialog box right here, and we're going to type in the new name of this query, which is M02Q02. Alright, so we're going to type that right here, and we're going to click OK. So and you'll have to do that on some of your queries as we go through this module, and also on your in the lab. On some of the queries, you're going to reuse a previous query, and when you do that, you'll have to save that second and third version of the query with different names, and so you'll have to go to File and Save As instead of just clicking on the Save button. Okay? All right. So we've got that. We've got our second query done. So now we need to click on page 74. It wants us to click the View button again to go back again to Design View. And what it wants us to do here is erase the criteria under Account Name. Okay, so we're going to delete where it says like K asterisk. Okay, I'm going to delete that. And what we're going to do is add the city field to the design grid. So we're going to go up here to the field list box, find the city field here, double click on it. So it adds the city field as the last column in the design grid. And then what it wants us to do is we want to find all the clients, or all the accounts, all the accounts that live in the city of Granger. Okay, so to do that, we added our city field, which is what we needed to do first. Then we're going to, in the criteria row under the city field, we're going to type in the city that we're looking for, which in this case is Granger. Okay, you'll have to look at the correct spelling on page 74. Step 1 there, you'll have to make sure you type it exactly the way that it's shown. If you don't use the spelling that's in the table, in the account table, then you're not going to get the results correctly. Okay? Alright. Then what we're going to do is, you'll notice there's a little checkbox up here in the show row of the city field in the design grid. Right now it has a little check mark in it. That little check mark just means that the city field will display in the results when we run the query. But in our case, since we know that all the fields, are actually all the records that we get in the results of this query are all going to be from the city of Granger, there's no need to show that particular field, because it will just show Granger all the way down throughout the results. And so anytime you want to use a field as a criterion in a query, but you don't want to show that field in the results, then what you do is you click the little show checkbox to remove the check, in this case for the city field, and that way when we run the query now, let's go ahead and click the Run button, and you'll notice it shows us three records in the results, and those 3 records are basically accounts that live in the city of Granger, but we did not include the city field. Even though we used the city field in the design of the query, you know, as the criterion, there was no need to show that in the results, because it would just say Granger 3 times. And so to kind of eliminate some of the extra or kind of eliminate some of the redundancy, we left off the city field. Okay, and it may tell you to do that on some of your assignments and so forth and some of the other queries. So just kind of be aware that you may have to use that show checkbox. All right, so we've got, just kind of look at the picture on page 75 and make sure that you end up with the correct 3 records in the results. All right, then on the bottom of page 75 it talks about a special type of query called a parameter query, which is basically a query that's going to prompt you for input whenever it's used. A parameter query is a lot of times used by businesses in situations where the people that need the information from the database may not have ability or skill to use Access and be able to design queries like we're doing now. And so to kind of eliminate that extra time and effort in teaching someone how to use the database to set up the query, what you can do is instead set up a parameter query where it's going to prompt the user to just type in what they're looking for, and it just makes the process of finding information from the database very, very quick and easy. So what we're going to do to set up a parameter query here is on page 76, we're going to return to Design View by clicking the View button up on the Query Tools Design tab. And then we're going to erase the criterion under the city field, that Granger text that we typed in just a minute ago. So we're going to delete that. All right. And in its place, in the criteria row under the city field, we're going to type in what's shown on step 1, the second bulleted item there on step 1 on the top of page 76. So you're basically going to type in a left square bracket and then type in enter city and then a right square bracket. Okay? And the square brackets basically tell Access that the criterion that we're entering is a parameter, and to basically set this up as a parameter query. All right, and then all we need to do next is just click the Run button, and just like we said, when we set up a parameter query like we just did, it's going to, instead of actually showing us the results of the query, like it did on other queries when we click the Run button. In this case, since we set this up as a parameter query, it's going to open up an enter parameter value dialog box. And in this case, it's going to have us type in a city. And in this case, on the bottom of page 76, it wants us to type in Wells as the city that we're looking for. And then we're going to click OK, and we should see 2 records in the results. So look on the top of page 77 in the picture, make sure you have the correct 2 records in the results here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to save this query, but we're going to have to save it with a different name than what it's currently saved as. And so we're going to have to kind of use the same method that we used earlier to save with a different name. So we're going to have to go to File, up on the ribbon, go to Save As, click on Save As, then click on Save Object As, and then Save As. And then it's going to prompt you to type in the name of the new name for this object, which is going to be Account City Query. And you can see that name on step 4 on the top of page 77. It tells you what to type in as the name of this query. So Account City Query. Alright. And then we're going to click OK. So now we've got that saved with the new name. And then it wants us to close the Account City Query. So we're just going to click on its Close button. Alright. Now, on the bottom of page 77, it wants us to learn how to use a parameter query. We kind of already learned it a little bit, but it wants us to kind of get some more practice here. So what we're going to do is open the navigation pane by clicking the shutter bar open close button. We're going to right click on the Account City Query. Okay, I'm going to right click on that, and we're going to click the Open button, and it opens the dialog box. It's going to prompt us to type in a city that we're looking for, and on top of page 78 it wants us to type in that same city again, Wells. Alright, so we're going to type in Wells and then click OK, and you'll see the results. Okay, and then it wants us to close that query. Okay, so the second part of that we just did was just to kind of learn how you would use a parameter query once you have saved it. Alright, so we've learned about parameter queries. Alright, now on page 78. So far, when we've used criteria in the design grid to see certain results from our database, we've used text. The next thing we want to do on page 78 is learn how to use numbers as criteria in the design grid. So we're going to close the navigation pane. We're going to click the Create tab just like we did earlier to create that. Remember when we created that first query? And we're going to click the Query Design button just like we did earlier. And we're going to make sure the account table is selected in the Show Table box. And then click Add. And then click the Close button to close the Show Table dialog box. Alright. Then we're going to drag the lower edge of the account field list box just like we did earlier so we can see all the fields in the list box. And then we're going to add the following fields to the design grid. We're going to double click on account number to add that field, account name, amount paid, and current due. Okay, so make sure you have the correct 4 fields down here on the design grid. Alright, what we want to do in this case is we want to find all the accounts from the account table that have a current due amount of $0. Okay, that basically those accounts that don't owe us anything, that don't have a current due amount. Okay, alright, so what we're going to do very simply is look in the criteria row under current due. We're going to click on the criteria row under current due, since that's what we're looking for. We're going to type in 0. Okay, and make sure you type an actual 0 and not just an O. It needs to be the actual number 0. Okay, the numerical value 0. So you're going to type in a 0. Don't type any dollar signs or commas or decimal places, just the digit 0. Okay, then you're just going to very simply click the Run button, and basically you should see just one record. There's only one record in the account table that has a current due amount of 0. And you can kind of check your result, your query result, by looking at the bottom of page 78, or just looking on the query result that I have up here. Just check and make sure you have the correct just one record in the result. Okay, alright, now we're going to save this query. Now since this was not a query that we reused, this was a completely new query that we started, we can just click the Save button up on the Quick Access toolbar. It's going to open up the Save As dialog box, and we're going to type in the name of this query, which is shown on the top of page 79, step 3, okay, which is MO2Q03, which again just stands for Module 2 Query 3. Alright, we're going to click OK to save that, and then we're going to close the query by clicking its Close button. Alright, so on page 79, the next thing it wants us to learn about is how to use comparison operators in the results of a query. Alright, the query that we just did, we were looking for an exact dollar amount. But in some cases, you might want to find accounts that have a current due amount that is within a certain range. Let's say from 0 to 1,000, or 1,000 to 1,500. And so anytime you want to look at not just a particular number in the result, but a range of numbers, then you use comparison operators. And it kind of talks about those on page 79. Comparison operators are things like greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, not equal to. So just kind of look at what a comparison operator is there on page 79. All right, so what we want to do next here is we want to find the account managers with a start date after January 1st, 2015. All right, so what we're going to have to do is use a comparison operator in this query. So first thing we're going to do is start a new query by clicking the Create tab and then clicking on Query Design, just like we did earlier. But in this case, since the information that we're wanting is about the account managers, we're going to have to click on the account manager table in the Show Table dialog box. So this query it uses the account manager table. So we're going to have to make sure we click on account manager here and then click add and then click the close button to hide the show table dialog box. Then just like we learned earlier, we're going to have to drag the field list box down so we can see all the fields in the field list box. Alright, so these are all the fields from the account manager table, and so on bottom of page 79, step 1 there, it wants us to add the following fields to the design grid: account manager number, last name, first name, and start date. Okay, remember, all you do to add fields from the field list box and add them to the design grid is just double click on each one, and as you double click on each one, it adds them to the design grid down here. Make sure you have the correct 4 fields and in the correct order down here on the design grid. So again, what we're looking for in this query is account managers with a start date after 1/1/2015. So what we're going to do is click the criteria row under the start date field down here, and we're going to type in a greater than sign, because we're looking for dates after a certain date, basically. Okay, so greater than sign and then 1/01/2015. Alright, make sure you type it exactly the way you see it there on the bottom of page 79. Again, these things have to be exact. Okay? Alright, so you're going to type that greater than 1/1/2015 as the criteria row under the start date field on the design grid, and then what you're going to do is click the Run button. And what you should see in the results, if you'll look on the top of page 80, you should see 2 records in the results, because there were 2 account managers that basically their start date was after that date that we specified. Okay, so and again, always look at the information that you're looking at in the results to see if it actually meets the criteria that we set. In this case, both of these records do. Okay, alright, so what we want to do here is we want to save this query. So we're going to click the Save button, and this was a new query, so we can just click the Save button, and then in the Save As dialog box, we're going to type in M02Q04. Alright, and then we're going to click OK to save that. And then we're going to close that query by clicking its Close button. Alright, now on the bottom of page 80, it talks about using compound criteria. So far, all the criteria that we've added to the design grid to create all the queries that we've created so far have all been single criteria, or basically one criterion. But you're not limited to just looking for one thing in the results of a query, from your database. You can actually look for records that meet more than one criterion. All right, and there are 2 types of compound criteria. There is the AND criterion, which is basically where both criteria have to be true in order for that record to display in the results of the query. And then there's also the OR criterion, where either one of the criteria can be true for that record to display in the results. Okay, so we're going to kind of go through and do one of each of those so we can make sure that we understand what each one of those types of compound criteria is. Alright, so what we're going to do first is we want to find all the accounts in the account table with a current due amount greater than $2,500 and an account manager number of 31. All right. So what we're going to do is start a new query. So we're going to click the Create tab. Then we're going to click on Query Design. And then we want to add the account table to the query. So we're going to make sure account is selected in the Show Table box. Click Add and then click Close. All right. And then we're going to open up the field list box by dragging the bottom border down so we can see all the fields. We want to add the following fields. We want to add account number, account name, amount paid, current due, and account manager number. Okay, so make sure you have those specific fields in the design grid down here. Kind of check it with the book to make sure it's correct. Okay, then what we're going to do is type in the criteria that we're looking for. Again, the first criterion is that we're looking for is the current due amount greater than 2,500. So we're going to look, we're going to click the criteria row under current due on the design grid here, and we're going to type in greater than sign, all right, and 2,500. Again, when you're typing numbers as criteria, just type the digits of the number. Don't type any commas or dollar signs. Type it exactly the way you see it there on page 81. All right, then we're also going to click in the account manager number, criteria row under account manager number in the design grid, and type in 31. All right. When you want both criteria to be true in order for that record to display in the results of the query, you enter both criteria that you're looking for on the criteria row. Okay. All right. So we've got that done. So now we're just going to click the Run button, and we should expect to see 3 records. All right, again, when you look at the results of a query, make sure they make sense. So in our case, we would look at the current due amount for these 3 records that displayed in the results. Make sure they're all greater than 2,500, which is the criteria that we used, and that the account manager's number is basically 31 for each one of those. Okay, if we ended up with a query result that doesn't make sense, that doesn't answer the question correctly that we posed in the query design, then you would know that you need to go back to the design of the query and fix that particular problem. Okay. All right, so we've got this one correct, and so all we're going to do here is we're going to save this query. And this was a new query, so all we have to do is click Save, and then in the Save As dialog box, we're going to type in the name that you see there on page 81, step 3, which is M02Q05. All right, and then we're just going to click OK to save that. All right, now, the next type of query that we want to learn how to do is the OR compound criterion. So we've already learned how to use AND, which was the last query that we just ran. Now what we're going to do is very simply change that query into a OR criterion query. So what we're going to do in this case is find those accounts with a current due amount of greater than 2,500 or an account manager number of 31. So either one of the criteria can be true in this particular case in order to display in the results of the query. So to set this up, we're going to return to Design View by clicking the View button up on the file or up on the Home tab. Okay. It switches us back to Design View, and then very simply, this one's very easy. All you're going to do is under Account Manager Number, you're going to delete that 31 that we typed in earlier in the criteria row under Account Manager Number. Just delete that and move down one row, and still under Account Manager Number, but click on the OR row, which is the row right below the criteria row. You'll notice it's labeled over here. So we're going to click the OR row and type in 31 under Account Manager Number. So anytime you want either one of the criteria to be true to display in the results, then you enter the first criterion on the criteria row and the second one on the OR row. All right, so we're going to go ahead and click the Run button to run the query. Now, in this case, we're going to see a lot more results. You would expect to see a lot more results when you set up an OR compound criterion versus an AND compound criterion, because with AND, both criteria have to be true to display the results. With the OR criterion that we just set up, either one of the criteria can be true to display in the results. But just like we did on the other queries, on this one you would also want to look and see if it makes sense to you. Again, we were looking for those accounts with a current due amount greater than $2,500 or an account manager number of 31. So you would kind of go through and make sure that it actually meets the conditions that we set up, or the criteria that we set up. That, in other words, that it's showing us what we asked for. And you can also check it against the example there that you see on top of page 82 in your textbook. Alright, now since this was a query that we reused from a previous query, we're going to have to, in this case, to save this query, we're going to have to go to File, File tab up on the ribbon, and then Save As, and then Save Object As, and Save As. And then we're going to type in M02Q06 as the name of this query, and then click OK. Alright, so we've got it saved with the new name there. Alright, now on page 83, one of the other things that's kind of important when you're running queries is you may want to sort the records in a certain way. And so it talks about how you can specify a sort order on your query results on page 83. And you can use multiple what are called sort keys. A sort key is just the field that you use as the basis to sort your records. For example, we could sort the account table records by account name or account number. But if you use more than one sort key, the first one is the major key or primary sort key, and the second one is the minor key or secondary sort key. When you have multiple sort keys, whichever one is to the left on the design grid is the one that's going to be done first. So you would kind of set it up, how you want the sorting to be done. If you want it to be sorted based on one field first, and then within that sort you wanted another sort done, you would enter the first one that you want done first to the left of the one you want done last. Okay, and you'll see what we mean when we actually create the sorting here in just a second. So what we're going to do to learn how to do sorting, we're going to return to Design View. Alright, so we're going to click the View button to return to Design View for that query that we just created. And we're going to click the little gray box right above account number on the design grid, where basically point to that gray box there right above the field row under account number, where the mouse pointer is pointing down towards the field, okay, or down towards the column. And then what you're going to do is click, and it selects that first column, and then while holding down the shift key, you're going to click the box right above account manager number. Alright, and then what's going to happen is it's going to select all of those fields that we had in the design grid, and then you're going to press the delete key to delete all those fields. Because what we want to do now is we want to create a new query, and we want to delete all the fields from that design grid so that we can create a new query with different fields. Okay, so once we've done that, once we've cleared the design grid, we're going to go to page 84, and we want to add the city field to the design grid. And basically on this query, what we want to do is we want to find all the cities from the account table and display them in ascending order. Okay, there are really two types of order that you can do when you sort records. You can either sort them in ascending order, which is like A to Z, or if you're looking at numbers, it's 0 to 9, or basically in numerical order. Or you can sort based on descending order, which would be Z to A. All right. So what we're going to do, once we've included the city field here, you'll notice there's a sort row. It's the third row under the city field on the design grid. You're going to click on the right side of that sort row under city field, and you'll notice there is a drop down box that displays. And what you're going to do there is click on the order that you want to use for the city field, which in our case is ascending. So you're going to click on ascending as the sort order, and then you're going to click run to run the query. Alright, and you'll notice it basically shows all the cities that we have accounts in. Okay, now you'll notice there's some duplicate cities there. For example, Granger displays 3 times, Davidson twice, Wells twice, and so forth. Let's say that we wanted to know how many unique cities we have accounts in. Well, what you can do, there's an option on the property sheet that we can use for a query design where we can specify unique values only, basically to omit duplicate values. Okay, so that's what we're going to do on page 85. So we're going to return to design view by clicking the view button. All right, and we're going to click the second field or the second column in the design grid. Okay, just that empty field or column directly to the right of the city field in the design grid. And then what we're going to do, once we've done that, once we've moved our insertion point to that field row for the second column of the design grid, we're going to go up to the Show Hide group on the Query Tools Design tab and click on Property Sheet. Okay, and it opens up the Property Sheet dialog or Property Sheet task pane over here on the right hand side. And what we're going to do is find unique values. Right now the default is to display all the records in the results of a query, and even if the values are duplicated. Alright, but what we want to do is we want to change where it says no there under unique values. We want to change that to yes. Alright, so we just clicked on the down arrow and we clicked on yes. And so once you do that, you can close the property sheet by clicking its close button. And now we're going to click the run button. And now the results of our query show just the unique values in the city field. So basically it omitted any duplicate values. And this tool is useful in Access when you want to find all those particular cities that you have accounts in. Anytime you want to omit duplicate values, you use that method that we just used using the property sheet. Alright, so we've done that, and now we need to save this query, but since this was a reused query, what we'll have to do is we'll have to go to File and Save As, and then click Save Object As and Save As, and then we're going to save this as M02Q07. Alright, and then we're going to click OK. So now we've got that saved with the new name. Alright, next thing we want to do is we want to learn how to sort on multiple keys. Alright, so on the bottom of page 86, what we want to do is return to design view, and we're going to clear the design grid. Okay, so we're just going to click the little gray box right above the city field and press delete. Alright, and it deletes the city field from the design grid. And then we want to add the following fields to the design grid, as shown on step 1 on the bottom of page 86. So we're going to add account number, account name, account manager number, and amount paid. Alright, make sure you get them in that order. They're kind of a little bit different order than what they are in the field list box. So just be careful that you get them in the right order. Okay, so it should be account number, then account name, then account manager number, then amount paid. Alright, and then what we're going to do is we're going to choose ascending as the sort order for the account manager number field right here and for the amount paid field. Alright, and then we're going to run the query. Alright, and the results that we get, basically, we should see that the first sort key, or the major key, was account manager number. So you'll notice all the accounts are organized or sorted by account manager number first, from 31 all the way down to 58. And then within each one of those sorts, the amount paid field was the secondary sort key within each one of the account manager number sorting. Alright, so it was sorted based on account manager number first. That was the major key. And then it was sorted based on amount paid. Okay, that was the minor key. Alright, and so we want to save this, but again, we reused a previous query, so what we're going to have to do, just like we did before, we're going to have to go to File, Save As, Save Object As, Save As, and we're going to save this as M02Q08, just like you see there on page 87. And then we're going to click OK to save that. Alright, and then the last query that we're going to do as part of this video is on page 88. We're going to learn how to do a top values query. So to do this, we're going to return to design view by clicking the view button. We're going to click the return arrow. You'll notice in the query setup group on the Query Tools Design tab up on the ribbon, right now by default it returns all the records. Okay, even if they're sorted like we just did, it's going to return all the records. But what we want to do in some cases is just display maybe the top 5 records or the top 5%. And in this case, what we want to do is return just the top 5 records in the sort. So what we're going to do is, where it says all here in the return box, we're going to click on the down arrow and choose 5. We're going to click on 5 in that box and then run the query, and in this case it's just going to show the top 5 results. Alright, and this type of query is useful when, let's say you're giving a bonus to your top 3 salespeople for the month, or you're offering the customers a special bonus or discount if they were the top 3 customers for you for a particular month or a particular year. Then that type of query, using the top values query, is a useful tool for getting results like that. And so what we want to do here is we want to save this query as M02Q09. But again, since we reused the previous query, we're going to have to go to File and Save As, just like we did earlier. Click Save Object As and then Save As, and type in M02Q09 as the name of the query. Okay, as you see there on the bottom of page 88. And then just click OK. And then when you're done with that, you can go ahead and close the query. Alright, so that finishes up this video. In the next video, I will go through the remaining pages of Access Module 2. Thank you very much.